Welcome to Pathways Through the Prairie, the North Dakota State Library's podcast, where we interview North Dakota librarians and staff, state government leaders and state employees, and interesting North Dakotans. Today I'm joined by Angie Nagle. Angie is a school librarian for Underwood Public School. She has been at Underwood for 5 years, and before that, she was at Turtle Lake. Thank you for joining me today, Angie.
Thank you.
And I know Angie because she served as a member of our governor appointed advisory board, the Library Coordinating Council. She served a full 6 years and ended up as chair of the council. And now, unfortunately, she met her term limits. So I'm delighted to be able to talk to you, Angie. I miss seeing you um, regularly from the Coordinating Council meetings. So Angie, we'll jump right in. The State Library's vision is providing pathways to knowledge and opportunities. What was your pathway into libraries?
Well, I started loving to look at books and read at a pretty young age, and pretty much from when I can remember, I always loved going to the library at school. And um, even during the summers, we lived on a farm, but we would go to Makoti, North Dakota, to the bookmobile when they came. I think it was twice a month. And so that was always one of the highlights of my summer, was going to the bookmobile and stocking up on books that I could read at home. And I just devoured everything. And I loved libraries when I went into them as well, bookmobiles and libraries. And it kind of stuck with me. When I got into high school, I continued reading. And I was I did like a library aide my senior year position as one of my classes. And then when it came to deciding where I wanted to go to school or what I wanted to do, the only thing that really stuck out as a definite was working in a library. And so I toured Valley City. I think it was the summer before my senior year, I believe. And I just really loved the campus. It seemed like a good fit with kind of a smaller community and whatnot, and not too far from home. And so that's where I went after I graduated high school in 2009. And so I went there, got my library media minor, and I did major in English, but I at that time did not want to be in a school, so I just kept it at that, English and library. And I graduated in 2013, and I was able to get a job at Minot State at their Gordon B. Olson Library. And so I was going to be, I was the access, I think it was the access services coordinator for the evening. And um, I moved up there probably end of May, beginning of June. And I was there for probably about 2 months or so. Unfortunately, there was an incident where in the apartment next to mine that kind of gave me some PTSD, and so I didn't think I could make it there anymore, and moved home for just a bit. My parents live about an hour from Minot, and it was probably within a couple weeks I saw that Turtle Lake School was looking for a library aide. And so I applied and interviewed and got the job there, moved to Turtle Lake. That was the fall of 2013. And then I was the library aide for 2 years there. And then the librarian took another position. And so I was asked if I'd be interested in moving up, which I was. And unfortunately, though, I did not have the education degree. And at that time, that was required. So I went back to school online for 2 years. Um, I started as the librarian. And then I got my English education degree. I think I finished that in 2017. And then I decided, well, why not look at going to grad school, get my master's, since I'm already back in the swing of going to school. And I saw that the state library offered grants for going on to get your master's. And so I applied for that and was able to get it. I was accepted. And so I went ahead and got my master's from Texas Women's University. I think I finished that in 2019, I believe. And so, um, yeah, I got those degrees, had my first child in 2020, and it was then that the position in Underwood opened up. And so I decided to take that or apply for it since we lived in Underwood. Um, and that's kind of the end of the road for now, or where I'm at now, I should say, not the end of the road. That sounds bad. Um, but one thing I did forget, a couple summers, I think it was 2 summers at least, throughout my college years, the Garrison Public Library, their director position was open. And so I ended up being their interim director
Oh,
while
wow.
while I was home from college. I think it was 2 summers at least, maybe 3. I can't remember, but that was a fun experience and helped me more firmly believe I had my foot in the right door and was going the right direction. So,
Wow. So you've worked in all library types, just about. All that's left is
um,
special libraries, because you worked at
yes.
academics, even if it was just for a minute, and you've
Hmm.
you've done public and you've done school. Um,
Yes.
and you said you originally you didn't want anything to do with a school, and now here you've been in school libraries for a long time. So how do you must love it because you're still there. What changed your mind about being a school librarian?
Well, honestly, a lot of it was kind of happenstance or fate, I guess I would say. When I left mine estate, I didn't want to stay home indefinitely, and I wanted to find a job. And finding something, as most people know, isn't always easy, especially if you want to find something that fits you well, and is in your career field.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw the opening at Turtle Lake, I kind of just jumped on it, I guess. Being the aide, I wasn't teaching, so I was in the school, but I wasn't, responsible for students or like directly in charge of them or
Mm-hmm.
anything for the most part. And so I kind of went with it, I guess, and got a feel for what it was like watching the librarian, you know, and so that kind of helped me see and decide if that was something I could do or would like to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Sure.
Um, and I got to know the kids there still, and um, I felt like it was something I felt like I could um, could work with and do well at. Um, and it was kind of funny because the librarian I was working with actually was working on her LMS while I was there. So like we were like our roles were kind of opposite what they should be, if that makes sense. So it was really interesting being the aide and like helping her understand the library world and get to know the library world better. Um, and so, when she left, I felt pretty comfortable taking over. And also looking back, I did work with the summer reading programs and a Lego club a little bit when I was in Garrison too. So I did have a little bit of experience working with kids. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
the oldest.
Sure.
I'm the oldest of 4 children as well. So that probably has helped a little bit.
Sure. So I think a lot of people don't understand the impact school librarians have on students and all the different things that a school librarian does. Do you have a typical day, or is every day different?
Um, I would say, I mean, I've got my schedule and whatnot, but I would say when it comes down to it, every day is different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also teach junior and senior English, and so I'm definitely very busy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, typically my day, I have my high school classes and I've got at least one library elementary class every day. One or, yeah, one at least. Most days I have two or three. So I like I said, am very busy and with kids, everything is different every day. That's totally
Mm-hmm.
unpredictable. I mean,
Absolutely.
you start with what you're expecting, but it generally changes
Mm-hmm.
pretty much always.
And do you teach library skills to the elementary students, or do you strictly provide checkout time?
I work on teaching them library skills. Yes. Usually we do about a 15 minute lesson or so, up to 20 minutes. I'll do a lesson. I try to do an activity of some sort if I can come up with something or find something, and then they have probably 10 minutes or so to check out books most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Are
So,
I guess I don't, is Underwood a one school district, like a one building, or do you have to move between buildings?
we are one building, yes.
So your library serves K through 12 in
It,
one room.
yes, it does serve K through 12.
Okay. So that's a probably a pretty robust collection that you have then.
Yeah, it's a decent size. I'll admit my high school collection is kind of changed a lot. I've really kind of went down on a lot of my nonfiction since they tend to use online sources for research
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. Um, and the fiction, a lot of it, or a good chunk of it, was somewhat dated when I got here, but I have continued to work on that,
Mm-hmm.
updating it.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite thing about being a school librarian?
Oh man, probably when I bring a book to a student that requested it, or they find a book that they really like in the library and they're just like so excited to have that book. Especially like if I bring the book to their classroom that they requested and they'll be like, "Yes," or like, "It's here. I was waiting for that. Thank
Mm,
you." Like just just to see the excitement about reading in books is probably my favorite.
absolutely. Absolutely. What do you do besides books?
We are part of the North Dakota Schools Shared Collection on Sora. And so I try to get the kids going with that. Um, and actually, I just sent a newsletter in my newsletter this month. I made sure parents knew about it and that it was accessible, from their phones and at home and whatnot. And so I'm hoping that gets more people using it more frequently.
Sure.
Um, I
And for
probably
our listeners that don't know, Sora is the school ebook collection.
Yes, it's the basically the Libby version for schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of been one thing I've been focusing on lately. I think we've been part of the consortium for about I think it's our third year probably,
Okay.
roughly, third or fourth. So just continuing to promote that. I also do a Lego club twice a week after school. And we do a quiet club 3 mornings a week when the students get here. So it's an alternative to their recess that's outside and when they get here. Um, Ironically, it is not always very quiet, but that was the name that we started with, and I've just stuck with it for now. But they come in and uh, they'll either use the different robots that I have, or they might use the laptops. Sometimes they read or color. I have puzzles available. And it's just, I don't know, it's fun to see them all in the morning. There's even been some days that we've played hide and seek, so I kind of just roll with it.
Fun. That's
Yeah.
fun. What do you think people would be surprised to learn about your position as a school librarian?
Well, for people not in the library community, I would say just that it's a lot more than checking out books, basically. And I guess for people in the library community already, I don't know. I probably would just say that it's a lot. You take your library, this tasks you already do running a library, that people do full time just that job, and then you add teaching even just two classes on top of
Mm-hmm.
it, and it can be a lot sometimes. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm let me think here, I think I'm 6 years into teaching and doing library together, and I still I'm trying to figure out how to juggle it all
Mm-hmm.
successfully. So that's probably the biggest thing I would
Mm-hmm.
say.
Do you have an aide?
No, I do not.
So you're a solo librarian and on top of teaching two classes. And unfortunately, we have a lot of school librarians in North Dakota who are in that situation where they're teaching and trying to do library. And there's so much that goes into running a school library that people don't realize because someone has to order the books, someone has to catalog the books, making sure that students can find them. Someone has to process it, put on a cover, put on call numbers, put on the barcodes because you guys are automated. You're part of the Central Dakota Library Network with
Hmm.
other schools and public libraries and even a couple academics. So that means then you have interlibrary loan requests that you have to fill as well.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't know how school librarians get it all done. Well, you don't get it done in the school day.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's been kind of a hard part for me too. A lot of teachers and school employees, they stay longer than what's required of them, and I used to do that before I had children, and now I've just kind of made it a firm line that at least until they get older, I gotta just work with the time that I have at school that's
Mm-hmm.
required of me. And um it's hard because I love working on the library stuff, and I want to have things done and have the books out there for the kids, but I also need to make sure I'm taking the time I need with my family too,
Mm-hmm.
especially with how young they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm definitely, I always got a list of things that I need to do, haven't caught up on, etc. But it's at the end of the day, it's there and it'll get done when it gets done.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. What are you most excited about for your library?
I would say, I know it's kind of controversial to some people, but I've really enjoyed growing our graphic novel collections and seeing the students just devour those. It's amazing. Like, I mean, I have students that probably wouldn't read if it weren't for the graphic novel collections.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether it's because they're a struggling reader or, maybe they don't have the attention span or focus to sit down and read a regular novel. It's just seeing them really get into those has been so cool for me. I mean, we didn't even really have graphic novels when I was in high school or elementary school. And so it's just, I don't know, it's fun to see that the impact that collection has had.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
and actually, part of how I was able to grow it, I mean, it helped a little bit anyways, but the a former librarian from the school passed away, and I think it was like four of her friends from college. I believe they were all from college. They um, gave us a memorial donation.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I used that to get several of the graphic novels that helped continue building that. collection.
What a cool way to honor her too, to start a new collection that's bringing kids in the library and getting them hooked on reading. And I, I've I know some people don't count audiobooks either. And if you're reading, whether you're reading with your eyes, whether you're reading with your ears, you know, you're engaging with books, and it doesn't matter the format. You know, some people don't like ebooks, some people don't only like physical books, or some people don't like physical books. Now they only read ebooks. And I say, who cares? Like, read a book. I don't
Right.
care. Read a book. So, and attention spans are so different than they used to be. And so if that means a kid only has the attention to read a graphic novel, and for people who don't know what a graphic novel is, it's basically a grown-up version of a comic book. So it's a longer story than a comic book, but told in sort of that same visual format.
Mm-hmm. And now that we talk a little more, I do have one other collection I have to talk about, because that has been huge for us too. I think I started this collection with a grant from, I almost want to say, what was it? It was either from like one of our local energy companies or through Dollar General. I think it might have been the Dollar General one, actually. Yeah, I think it was the Dollar General literacy grant that I started it with. But we have a collection of Vox books, which are books that read the story while actually having the physical book there. So students can listen to it and follow along on the pages with the words and see the pictures as well. And so I started that collection. I suppose it was probably within a year or two after I started here. And I I can't there's more on the shelf now, but I know earlier this year there's some weeks or some days where like all of the nonfiction ones are gone. They love listening to the books about animals, especially. And so my pre-K and kindergarten are probably the main ones that use it. I get some first graders and second graders checking them out too, but they love those books.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's great. I know there's some kids, some students out there that, maybe their parents work a lot and they don't always have time to read to them, or, maybe their home life isn't the best. And so it's great that we can provide the type of resources for our students where,
Mm-hmm.
they love listening to the teacher read at school and they wish that they could have that at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the Vox books, we can give them that opportunity.
That's awesome. This will date me, but when I was a baby youth services librarian, we used to have the same thing, but it was on cassette tape. So you had the cassette tape and then you had the book. I remember at one of my libraries where I was a director, and I had a library trustee. She was a school librarian, and her son had a learning disability, and they didn't make any accommodations for him, and she discovered if he could listen to the book while he was reading it, then he could comprehend it. And so she would check out like a book on CD and check out the physical book together, to help her son be able to comprehend what he was reading. And so that's another reason that sometimes people like to have the audio with, the physical book as well, because it's the easiest way for them to comprehend. So that's awesome that you have Vox books and that they're really popular. That's super cool.
I am the one that started getting the bookmobile coming here because it didn't come here until I started. And I was like, they go to Turtle Lake and they're in Riverdale. So let's see if they can come here. And so they've been coming here now
Oh,
since
wow.
I started here too. So that's
Who
kind of fun.
who's bookmobile?
Riverdale, McLean Mercer.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
That's cool. What's your elevator speech, Angie? What do you want people to know about your library?
Um, I would say just that I think it's welcoming. I don't know, welcoming, comfortable, safe space, something for everybody, you know. I try to have a variety, catering to, you know, boys, girls, high schoolers, middle schoolers. We've got the graphic novels and the Vox, Sora, you know, for those that maybe they drive to school, you know, and they can listen to a book when they're driving to school and back. Um, I even have a few iPads that students can check out to use with Sora if they don't have a device at home. Um,
Nice.
yeah, I mean, I try to be. I would say our library is pretty innovative and up to date, and we're working on helping our students build skills and gain knowledge that will help them be good citizens of this time.
That's great. And I should have given you a heads up before we started, and I forgot to, but I always like to end. I never ask a librarian what's your favorite book because how could you say just one, right? So, what's a book that you've read recently that you love to share with people?
Ooh, recently,
Or
well,
any book that you've read that you love to share with people.
right. Well, I mean, Harry Potter is always my go-to because I've read them so many times. And I mean, I remember staying up late, turning my light off and turning the hallway light on and reading in the hallway on the floor so my parents thought I was sleeping. So, um, yeah, that's always my go-to is Harry
Mhm.
Potter. But
I love that. I'm listening to the new Audible versions, the full cast
oh,
versions,
okay,
and enjoying them immensely. Very different. I love, love, love Jim Dale as an audiobook narrator. I've listened to other books just because he's been the narrator. So it's very different listening to this full cast, but it's really fun.
right. Um, and then I guess right now, a lot of my reading I do with my classes. We're doing The Great Gatsby in 11th grade, which I enjoy that one pretty well. And then we're trying something new with my seniors. I only have three of them this semester, and so I asked them if they wanted to do kind of like a little book club type of thing to start off the year and or the semester, and we ended up going with the let them theory. And so we are mostly listening to the let them theory. We did get some print copies as well, but that's been a pretty interesting book to read as well. And we're
I'm not
only, yeah, probably about a quarter of the way through, maybe.
okay. I'm not familiar with that one. Is it fiction, nonfiction?
It's nonfiction. The author is Mel Robbins, and she talks about um, it's kind of so far more about not worrying about what others are thinking of you and doing, and just letting them do their thing and
Oh,
focusing on you doing what you need to do for yourself.
oh, what a
It's it's
great book
it's
for high
an
schoolers to
yeah.
read.
It's an interesting concept. And I thought, hey, these seniors are going to be going out on their own. They've dealt
Mm-hmm.
with some of the peer pressures and whatnot the last couple of years. And you know what? They're going to keep experiencing that as adults, at least for a little bit longer. And so I thought it would be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to agree. So that's what we're going with. It's
Yeah.
been fun to I know I can tell, we're all listening to it in class, and I can tell they are engaging with it because I know yesterday we were listening and I had one girl like, making comments or responses here and there and stuff, and so it was kind of neat.
How does that was supposed to be the last question, but this one just popped into my head. How do you feel being a librarian impacts what you do in the classroom as a teacher?
Hmm. Um, that's a good question. I mean, I would say, like with kind of what I'm doing right now with the book club, I it's easier for me, or I know of more resources and have access to them, rather than, some teachers don't always think, hey, maybe we can get this from the library, or maybe we can
Mm-hmm.
request a book club kit from the state library. And so I think just being knowledgeable of those things as a librarian and having different connections, it's it opens more opportunities for myself and my students. And I mean, I do try to make sure all the teachers know, that there's book club kits available, and hey,
Mm-hmm.
I can get you 3 more copies of this if you need it. But just readily knowing that and being able to
Sure.
go to our catalog and say, send me this, this, and this.
Right.
I think that's probably um the biggest benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Well, Angie, it was so much fun to talk to you. I learned so much more about you and your history and about your school. And I know from just conversations we've had at the coordinating council meetings that you're doing great things. But it was fun to hear in more detail about some of those things. So really appreciate you taking the time to listen. And thank you everyone for tuning in to Pathways Through the Prairie.